Good afternoon. My name is Ellie Krug. I'm the Executive Director of Call for Justice. Call for Justice is a small Minneapolis nonprofit that works to help connect low-income people with civil legal resources. We're here today to do our 26th training with United Way 211. Today's training is Ellie's top 10 takeaways, revisited and enlarged. So there's actually 11, but don't count. And this is a continuation of training that we began with United Way 211 beginning in March of 2012. Our original takeaways was conducted in 2013. It's time for us to come back, do some reviews, cover some new territory, but a lot of old territory, and revisit some well-worn, well-established concepts as it relates to getting low-income people connected with civil legal resources. And while our training here today is geared towards helping 211 Information and Referral Specialists to better refer people to legal resources in Minnesota, this training is applicable to just about anyone who's trying to navigate the civil or the criminal legal system. So today we will begin with covering a little bit of where we've come from. And as I said in the introduction, we have been training 211 since March of 2012. Come on in. And we began, as you may recall, with no template of any kind. Our training manual started with session 1, which was the basics, learning the difference between civil and criminal. And we've gone from there. It has been, in its best sense, a collaborative effort with everyone. And not only with 211, but with many of the civil legal nonprofits in the Twin Cities, as well as some of the social service agencies. I think we can say it's been a success. And we have some taxonomy. That would be data for our viewers sitting at home in their pajamas that reflects that our training has helped spread out the referrals across the board as it relates to the nonprofit legal community in Minnesota. We have seen the referrals spread out. We've seen the referrals increase to 17 key legal resources by an average of 400%. In some instances, those referrals have increased as high as 1,500%. As I said, we have done this will be our 26th training. And it's not at all for naught, because I want to report that just last month I spent an hour on the phone with a conference call with folks from California, with the California Bar Association, folks from California Legal Aid, 211 and a United Way in Central California that wanted to discuss how to replicate this training program out there. In November, we will have 2 folks coming from Cleveland who want to sit down and spend a day with 211 with Call for Justice to learn about how to duplicate this program in Cleveland. Some of you all of you have to know, because I've been talking about it incessantly. Call for Justice was the recipient of an award from the American Bar Association earlier this year, in large part for our work related to 211 and our training. So the bottom line is it's working, it's getting recognition, it is easily replicable, and we look forward to at least the promise that this program will be in existence in other places in the country in 5 or 10 years from now. Wouldn't that be kind of cool to know that you were part of something that began right here in little Bloomington, Minnesota? Okay. I want to also tell you about Minnesota Legal Advice Online, which we will come to later on in the program here, but that has shown wonderful results as a consequence of our training, our collaboration facilitation between state support for the Legal Services Coalition in Minnesota and 211. So we'll talk about that in a second. I have a question. Is everyone in the room getting our legal connector? Okay, are you reading it when you're getting it? Please do, because we're identifying new resources in the Legal Connector, and we're putting the word out about trends and about things that are happening. Is everybody finding it of value? Is there stuff in the Legal Connector that you would like to see that we haven't put in? Okay, well, think about that and let us know, all right? We're happy to try and make it as better as possible. And so you will see that in the most recent Legal Connector, there was reference to an insurance law clinic resource now being created between the Robbins Kaplan firm and the University of Minnesota Law School. So something to get on your radar. I don't know if Mary hasn't contacted me about that. I don't know if that'll go into your taxonomy or not, but it's something to at least, you get a call about insurance. So car insurance, you know, my car insurer won't cover me. I've had an accident and they won't give me a lawyer. I've had an accident, they're telling me they won't pay. My health insurance, there you go, won't accept this claim. My life insurance won't pay out you know, my husband died and the life insurance company won't pay out. These are the kinds of claims to send over to that clinic. How about the legal resources cheat sheet? Is everybody in the room familiar with that, the Call for Justice cheat sheet? Are we looking at it from time to time? Okay. We will be updating that in October. So we'll be adding some resources like the insurance law thing that I just talked about. And if between now and then there's something you want us to address with the legal or with the cheat sheet, let us know. Okay? All right. So what I wanted to cover after that was plaintiff's cases. And to come back, I am seeing through emails that we're receiving from 211 INR folks some difficulty in recognizing what is a plaintiff's case and what isn't a plaintiff's case. And so I want to go over that. The great thing about plaintiff's cases is once we have one, we just know where to send them. Just right there, it's just done. It's off your plate. So what is a plaintiff's case? A plaintiff's case is any case, for the most part. Okay, so remember, broad brush, there are always exceptions, but for the most part, any case involving somebody who has suffered a personal injury or an emotional injury where the recourse, that is the way to compensate this person is with money. So, very simple, car accident. It's simple for me, of course. Car accidents, dog bites, slips and falls. Landlord did not lock my property and the lock didn't work on the front door and they came in and they robbed me. Okay, that would be property damage, maybe emotional distress, other kind of property damage. Had a car accident, no one was hurt, but the insurance company won't pay for the damage to my car. That would be to the insurance folks, but it's also a plaintiff's case. Employment cases. I think I lost my job because I'm of color. Workers' comp. I got hurt on the job and they won't now, they're telling me they won't cover me. Medical malpractice cases. Not that you're seeing a lot of those. Attorney malpractice cases. You know, I had a lawyer, the lawyer missed the deadline, and my case got dismissed, okay? I would also add, those kinds of cases, we'd be referring the caller to the Office of Professional Responsibility in Minnesota. And we get a fair number of those calls at Call for Justice, and that's where we're referring folks. But on the plaintiff side, it's anything involving personal injury, emotional injury, where it's dollars that are the things that compensate folks. And if we get those calls, as I said, easy referral, boom, to the Hennepin County Bar Association or the Ramsey County Bar Association, to their lawyer referral services, we're done. You know, you can, if you want, give them a backup referral to Law Help, so maybe they can read up a little bit on what the subject is. But really, that's where we want to send those folks. And those are, once you get down what a plaintiff's case is, you know, they're pretty easy referrals. Anybody have a question about that? Let's split some hairs. Yes.
So I
Jennifer.
had a plaintiff's case call today.
Okay.
And it was really, it didn't seem like it was anything that any lawyer was going to take because her kid was smacked by another child once on the bus. So I considered referring them to mediation instead.
Bravo!
Would that have been more appropriate?
Excellento. You get gold star. That would have been what I would say to do. Absolutely.
Okay.
Because, okay, we had a child slapped on the bus, maybe a little personal injury, but probably a whole lot more embarrassment, maybe emotional distress, okay? But there's, for the most part, no plaintiff's lawyer that's going to take that case.
I just kind of wanted to confirm that because Mom was raging mad and I actually didn't give the mediation referral because she was really so dead set on the plaintiff part, and going back I think I would have tried.
Okay. Well, and the way to couple that is go ahead and give her the referrals to the attorney services, let them tell her no, but give her the mediation as well so that she's got some fallback, she has some alternative if it doesn't work out.
Okay.
If you go to our cheat sheet, there is a section on education law. And so there are, technically, potentially, that might be an education-related matter. This might be bullying that's carrying over from the school system. I wouldn't expect that would be the first thing that you would tumble to. But that's the kind of thing that if you refer the caller to the attorney referral services, they can weed through that. They can sort that out.
Okay.
Okay, but great. Yeah. And we were reminded yesterday, just a second, Melissa, because I will forget this thought. We were reminded yesterday about the value of mediation. I think we need to talk about it more at Call for Justice. I think that mediation training that we got, over a year ago was very helpful. And mediation is exactly the kind of things in dealing with human interaction where people aren't getting along. That's, for the most part, lawyers will just muck that up. Get a mediator in and somebody who can, lawyers, who can, help diffuse the situation. Yes, Melissa.
Okay, so I guess I have a question. So on here, you're saying refer them to the lawyer referral if it's employment-related claims, like they fired me because I'm black. So when do I know the difference between referring them to employment law services or when to refer them to the lawyer referral line?
Great. So you're asking, referring to the Human Rights Commission,
Right.
Minnesota Human Rights Commission, or to the EEOC.
Right.
Okay, wonderful. And do both. Okay? So give them both of those referrals. The EEOC and the Human Rights, the Department of Human Rights in Minnesota will investigate claims. But they won't investigate every claim, and they won't take every. I mean, some of those they deem that they're not, there's no probable cause. That doesn't mean that it might not have a legal basis. It doesn't mean that a lawyer might not take the case. So you want to go ahead and give them both referrals.
Okay.
Okay? So excellent question, and we probably should revise that on our, Kristen, before we put it on the website. So. Other questions related to employment? No. All right, so let's move on then. Okay. All right. Another thing we talk about in our training materials is the difference between primary and fallback referrals. Again, what we want to do as consistently as possible is to give everybody a primary referral as well as a fallback. What is a primary? Primary is where the caller will have the at least potential to talk to a legal professional. That might only be a screener, it might be a legal assistant, or a paralegal, or it might be a lawyer. Those referrals are going to be to something that's going to be open only during normal business hours. For some of our legal resources, they don't do intake every day, or if they do it every day, they're not doing it the full day. Obviously, make sure that the caller is aware okay, now listen, it may take multiple tries for you to get through to these folks. Or if there's an answering machine, you may need to put your information on there, and if you don't hear back from them by the next day, you're going to need to call them again. That gets into some other things we'll talk about persistence and pushing through the system. But for the most part, we want a primary referral where they'll be able to talk to a human being during regular business hours, and then we want to give them a fallback. What are our fallbacks? Our fallbacks are lawhelpmn.org, the court self-help centers, either telephonically or through email, or the walk-in centers in Ramsey County or in Hennepin. Minnesota Legal Advice Online would be one of our fallbacks. The State Law Library would be one of our fallback referrals, where they can speak to somebody. They'll be able to speak to a human during regular business hours at the State Law Library. The county law libraries would be fallback referrals, where they'll be able to talk to someone, but with many of those, like with Law Help and with the self-help centers, they're not going to be able to get legal advice. Remember, and that's something to make sure that we couch them to. But if you send them to Law Help at 2 in the morning, they're going to be able to look at what's going on with their legal issue. They'll be able to read up on this landlord-tenant problem they're having, or this consumer debt problem they're having, or why is it that this person is suing me for some issue related to the sale of the car that I gave them, that we sold 2 months ago. So very, very important. I also want to stress this thing that we're hearing at Call for Justice, and that I know that you guys are doing, and I just want to reinforce how important it is. We are hearing repeatedly that when we take an extra minute, literally, it may only be an extra minute to talk to someone, to explain with what I just did. Here is, but you may have to try it a couple of different times, or watch out for these hours. So remember when VLN came and talked to us and they trained and they said, their intake hours are between 10 and 1, but Martha Delaney said, call at 11. That's the best time to call. Those kinds of things to the callers. What we are hearing from them is thank you. Thank you so very much for taking the time to explain this to me. And this is the value of 211, because they are getting human beings on the telephone. And you guys do such an incredible job, and you're all very empathetic, and you're all very smart. So you're supposed to smile when I say that. Okay? So primary and backup referrals, okay? And we also, I want to reinforce, please, if you get a tough caller and you think that it's important for you to reach out to us via email, do that. And go ahead and get back to the caller with whatever we can add to the equation. In some instances, and we'll talk about this in a bit, you can send the callers to us, or you can send them to our website. You can send them to remember on the Call for Justice website, we have the alternative 211 referrals. These are referrals that are not in your database because they're for-profit related entities, but they're very specialized, like on Social Security or on education law. We'll be adding some of those, or they are low bono firms that are willing to do bankruptcy or family law for reduced fee. Please send the callers to our website, have them go to the Alternative 211 referral page under resources, and we'll be able to hopefully get them on their way to get connected to a legal resource. Anything else about fallback or primary referrals? Any questions or commentary? No? Okay. You guys are awfully quiet today. All right. So the 3 Ps. Let's just go through what they are. And here I have my back turned to the camera, but thank you. All right. So we want to reinforce the 3 Ps: persistence, patience, and preparation. Persistence. This is back to what I had said earlier relative to this is an overburdened system with not enough resources. So one of the things with your callers, please be reminding them that pro bono lawyers are of limited supply, that there are more people searching for lawyers than pro bono or low-fee lawyers are available. Remind them that it takes persistence on their part to make their way through the system. What is persistence? Just what I said earlier. Not allowing more than a day to go between leaving a message for a legal provider and calling back. I mean, we don't want them calling every hour. We don't want them calling, in the morning and then in the afternoon again. But I think that 24 hours is a reasonable time period for them to hear back from a legal provider. And if they don't, I think it's reasonable for them to call back. That is persistence. That is pushing the system. Other aspects of persistence would be making sure that they understand that they need to ask the questions, that they have a right to ask questions of lawyers. They have a right that if they're not understanding what the lawyer or the legal provider is saying to them, they have a right to say, would you explain it to me a different way? They have a right to ask for something in writing to help them better understand it. In some instances, they might not get that, but they at least get an explanation from the legal resource as to why they can't get something in writing. They have the right to ask somebody to slow down as they're explaining something. And they have the right that if they're not getting the answer, that they go to someone else for the answer. That is a little bit different, and I'm not expecting at all for you to carry this torch, but that's a little bit different from the caller who's already gotten the answer 3 times. And the answer is no, or the answer is there's not a case here, or the answer is don't do that, such as there's no lawyer is going to, if the caller says, I've heard from 3 lawyers and they won't handle the slap case on the bus, okay? Pretty much we want the caller to stop looking for a lawyer at that point. I'm not looking for you to carry that torch, okay? You can send that caller to me. I will carry that torch for you.
Oh, okay.
All right? Because I think that that would be in the hard to handle cases.
We get a few of those every week.
Okay, well, I want you to be a little bit discretionary on what you do with that. Okay, Elle. And so, but that is different. Hearing that this is not a case 3 times from 3 different lawyers is different than not getting an answer. That nuance is one that I can address if somebody, if I'm dealing with somebody on the telephone. So that is persistence. Pushing, is mixed up with that, and that very well is explaining to callers that sometimes the telephone isn't going to work. Sometimes you need to go to the office. So for example, remember that VLN, Volunteer Lawyers Network, will do intake over the telephone, but they also have one morning where they'll do in-person intake in Minneapolis. You can remind the caller, guess what? You can go, if you're not hearing back from them, you can go down there. Remember that we have the LAP clinic in Hennepin County, where people can actually go and talk to a lawyer. We've got the Ramsey County Law Library, where I think it's on Tuesdays, where they're having their clinics don't help me, Tuesdays, law clinics, where you can go in person and speak to a lawyer, okay? So this is some brainstorming on the telephone with you, between you and the caller, but that is pushing the system. I'm not getting an answer, it's not working. All right, I now need to go in person to some place. And it's an inconvenience, but but it may pay off. It may not, but it may pay off. And that's the kind of thing to remind the caller. No guarantees that if you go in person, you're going to get the assistance, but it's something to try, and maybe it will work for you. Okay? All right. And preparation. So we've got 3 P's: persistence, patience. Okay, patience, of course, is them understanding, that things do take time. All right, and preparation would be, as you're speaking with your callers, make sure that you tell them, bring the papers with you. When you talk with the lawyer or the legal resource, whether it's over the telephone or whether it's in person, bring the papers, whatever the legal matter is. If it's involving a landlord-tenant issue and it's about the locks not working or the window that's broken or the toilet that's overflowing or the sink that is a mess or the cockroaches that are crawling through the kitchen, tell them, take a picture. Take many pictures so that you have something to show to the lawyer. Yesterday we were talking and somebody reminded us that maybe you need to remind them to get a pen and paper to take down phone numbers, as you're talking to them on the call, okay? You tell them to bring paper and pen when they meet with the legal professional. We want them to be able to take notes. The worst case they can do is meet with somebody, get some advice, and they don't take it down. They don't understand, and they don't remember what it was that the lawyer said to them. Remember that many times the brief advice can be as short as 20 minutes in a very crowded place that's noisy, where there are other people waiting, where everybody has the press of time. Bring pen and paper so that you can take notes in those 20 minutes. Okay? All right. Any questions or thoughts about this?
I just wanted to add for preparation, something that's come up for me in the last few weeks is people have been calling about criminal cases saying that they weren't assigned a lawyer. It's really good to inform people that because of the staffing of the public defense office, you may not meet your public defender until a few moments before the first court hearing, and that's normal.
Right, that's great. That's a great point. You may not meet them until you're there in the courtroom. That doesn't mean you don't meet them until you have a trial. It just may mean you're not going to meet them until right before you have to enter a plea or your initial appearance where you read the charge. Sorry. And so, yes, important thing to remember. And thanks for reminding us about that. But that's within the preparation. That's within, understanding how the system is and how it works. Okay, let's remember the difference between full rep and brief advice. So recall that I've talked about this before. Full representation is back when I was in law school and graduated in the early 1980s, which seems so long ago, that lawyers at that time were ethically prohibited from doing anything other than representing a client on a legal matter from the beginning of the legal matter until the end of the legal matter. A lawyer could not, back in 1982, have a client come into the office and say, you know what, the only thing I'm going to do for you is write you a letter. That's it. I'm not going to handle anything else. Even if you're willing to, pay me, or even if you're willing to do some of the work, that's all I'm going to do. I was prohibited from limiting my services that way, and I could have ethically been charged with something as a result. Now, because the system has been so overburdened, the system has come up with some stopgap compromises, fixes that are aimed at helping people connect with lawyers, even if it is for only 20 minutes. So today, we have the concept of brief advice and brief services. Brief advice is essentially where a client meets with a lawyer. The lawyer limits his or her involvement to a discrete aspect of the legal matter that brings the person to the lawyer, assists in giving some concrete advice. So for example, the client who says, I have this, I'm getting these letters from a collection agency that are telling me that I am going to be sued. And that may be the lawyer saying, asking, are you on government benefits? The client saying, yes, I only live on Social Security. And we know from prior trainings that those monies would be exempt from garnishment. And it may be the lawyer then at that point saying, I think you're going to be all right. You don't need to worry. They're not going to be able to garnish your bank accounts. Now, that's brief advice, all right? Brief service would be where the lawyer says, okay, I'm going to write a letter on your behalf to this creditor, and I'm going to tell the creditor that your bank accounts are exempt from garnishment, and to tell them, too bad, go somewhere else. That would be brief service on the attorney's part. The lawyer sends off the letter, and that's the end of, or the lawyer may write the letter, but it may be under the name of the client, but it may have legalese in it. So somebody reading the letter says, okay, a lawyer wrote this, you know. We always work through innuendo. But then once that lawyer is done with the letter, the lawyer is done with the client. The lawyer doesn't follow up with whether the letter's received. The lawyer doesn't negotiate with the collection agency. The lawyer doesn't even call the client afterwards to say, are you okay? You know, have you had any further problems? That's just, in a perfect world, all of those things would happen. But because the system is overburdened, the best we do is give the client some advice and send off the letter on the client's behalf. Will it work? Yeah, in many instances it works. Is it pretty? No. Okay? But again, it works. And so that's the difference between the two. It is important for you to be, to the extent that it comes up in your conversations, to be reminding the callers that they may get as brief as 20 minutes with the lawyer. And we're sorry, but that's the way the system works. That doesn't mean that a client can't go back to a clinic to see if they can find a lawyer to help them as the legal matter progresses. The problem is they may not see the same lawyer who helped them the first time. So there's not that relationship, that legal relationship that, you know, we like to have as humans. I mean, everyone here, I assume, likes to have their own doctor, right? And God forbid there's a new doctor that comes in the room and you don't get to see that doctor, right? There's that feeling of, oh. So, you know, it works in the legal field as well. But because of the way the system is burdened, we have brief advice and brief service. Any questions or commentary? All right, legal aid. We make a lot of referrals to legal aid, and let's just revisit what the core legal needs would be for legal aid referrals. And they are relating to the 5 basics, 5 core legal needs. That would be relative to shelter, landlord-tenant, some foreclosure matters, safety, domestic violence, freedom from harassers, freedom from abusers, employment benefits or benefits generally of any kind as it relates to government benefits, access to government benefits, access to medical benefits, preservation of key family relationships. These would be the kind of call where you hear from the caller, she won't let me see my child. My daughter-in-law refuses to allow us grandparents to see our grandchild. Things of that nature. Those are all good legal referrals for legal aid. And, you know...
Isn't that providing they're low income?
Providing that they're low income. Yes, thank you, Lael. So, yes, so we needed to make sure, and keep me on track here, thank you. We also have our not only do they need to be low income, so we're talking for the most part 125% to 187, no higher than 200% federal poverty guidelines, but we're also talking geography as well. So remember, we have 3 legal aid organizations in Minneapolis, in the Twin Cities. That does not mean all 3 will handle anybody in the Twin Cities. They have their geography. When we get into greater Minnesota, we have our geography as well. So you guys have your taxonomy, but we also have that trifold hopefully, that everybody has sitting somewhere at their desk that lists all of the legal aid organizations across the state by county. So you get a caller from Chisago County, you know what legal aid organization serves Chisago. So, or Faribault, or wherever else. Okay? But yes, we've got income restrictions, we have geography restrictions, we have type of case restrictions. So, all right. Moving on. Item number 6 in our training material is about Spanish-speaking callers. As a general rule, we want to send Spanish-speaking callers to LORED and VLN. That will not always work. Sometimes there are conflicts. Sometimes VLN can't take the case for whatever reason. Kristen and I had a caller this week who was Spanish-speaking who said that she had struck out at VLN. We ended up referring her to the Ramsey County Bar Association. We had also had the conversation about money with her, whether she could come up with $600, which I'll get to in a second. Certainly, the bar associations do have language services. The bar associations will be able to handle some callers, but we will also have language barriers for callers, just as a general rule. That's just the way the system is. Okay, but standing rule, Spanish-speaking callers, send them to LORED. All right, the law libraries. Item number 7 on our revisiting. I want to remind us because the law libraries, particularly in the Twin City metro area, are all staffed by paid librarians. And of course, it's the best of all worlds. We have lawyers who are librarians, so we have smart people who like to help people, right? That's what librarians like to do. They like to help people. And so
They're the smart ones, though.
the librarians,
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yes. And so we want to make sure that we're remembering that the law libraries each they're running clinics, they have the librarians there to provide services. They can't provide legal advice, but they will help people navigate the system. And importantly, they will brainstorm with people in legal need. So you have people who are showing up. So now we're back to the 3 Ps. You have people showing up at the law libraries and then be able to engage a law librarian, talking to a law librarian, and being able to brainstorm about their legal matter. Is it guaranteed they're going to get help? No. But at least they will know that they're trying. And that is pretty important. Okay? All right. And we have, this time around, we have added reference to the state law library. So the state law library is staffed during regular business hours with multiple librarians. We have a staff, they also have Ask a Librarian. And Barbara, is there anything that you want to add about the state law library?
No, I deal with the legislative library, so.
Okay, all right. So the state law library is the place to send the wacky callers, okay? So the caller who says, can I land a helicopter on my front lawn next week? You know what? We're not going to legal aid with that. We're not going to VLN with that. Send them to the state law library, okay? You've got the caller who's got the question about the fence. And I think that it was built in 1893, and it's got a bend in it, and I think that bend means that I own that part of the property and the other person doesn't. Okay, state law library, send them to that kind of, questions about the Constitution, questions about property taxes, questions about gun ownership, state law library. They eat it up there. Okay. All right. All right. Legal emergencies versus legal problems. Now we're back to something that I think we started talking about in our first training session, something that we have talked about multiple times, but I'm back here talking about it again because I don't think that we can talk about it enough. So a legal problem is where you've got a caller saying, I'm getting a letter from someone, or, you know what, I had a car accident a couple weeks ago, and I'm now starting to get phone calls from an insurance company, or my son is being accused of being a harasser, okay? Or, I don't know, we could go down the whole list, but these are where things are starting to simmer for somebody on a legal front, where, if not dealt with now, could turn into a legal emergency. And what is a legal emergency? That is where now you're facing a deadline of some type. Now you need to have a lawyer for something. You've got an employer who is saying you have 5 days within which to sign this release, as part of your separation from the company. And if you don't sign it, you're not going to get your $5,000 severance. That's in the legal emergency kind of category. And so with legal emergencies, people lose options. They lose the right. Many lawyers, if a matter comes to them and they have a hearing date within a week to 10 days of when the person shows up on the lawyer's doorstep, many lawyers will not take that legal matter because it may be too complicated, they may not have the time, they can't reschedule for whatever the hearing date is, and they're just not going to touch it. If somebody has waited for it to get that bad, now they've lost options. They've lost the ability to deal with their situation. So on the telephone, we want to always be stressing, okay, it sounds to me like you have a legal problem here. Do you know if you wait, it can turn into an emergency, and you can lose very significant options. It's important for you to deal with this now. Can I give you some referrals to some legal providers? Can I give you a referral to a web-based resource, Law Help, where you can read up on this? We urge you to speak to a lawyer about this. So, are we having any trouble spotting legal problems and being able to give that kind of advice? No? Okay, you guys are really quiet today. Maybe you didn't need this. Maybe I'm going to get I haven't seen yet the universal sign of boredom. So, but hopefully this is being helpful. Okay? All right. I'll just continue to move on. All right. Now, let's have a conversation which is about a brand new takeaway, and that is what I call planting the seed about hard conversations relative to money. This stems from our personal experience at Call for Justice. So there are a number of agencies in town that love Call for Justice, and they just send people to us. In some of those instances, when we get these callers, we're actually sending them to you, okay? Because that's the way we want the system to work. But for those that look like I can help them more quickly than sending them to you, we're having this is the way the conversations are usually going. And by the way, I know you're having these conversations too. Okay, so, caller, I need a pro bono lawyer. Okay, sound familiar? All right. And then I usually ask, what's the legal matter? And they'll say, well, it's, it's a family law matter. It's visitation. Let's not be sexist here. He's not allowing me to have the visitation that the court order says I'm entitled to have. Okay. What have you done to search for an attorney? I want a pro bono lawyer. Okay, I'm entitled to a pro bono lawyer. All right? And it's at that point that we are starting to have this kind of conversation. And the conversation, for me, I start it with, can you put your hands on $500 or $600? And the caller will say, sometimes will say, maybe. And if the caller says that, I say, and I go on to explain why. And if the caller says, no, I can't do that, then I say, is it possible for a relative or a friend to loan you $500 or $600? I always talk about Aunt Matilda. Many people have an Aunt Matilda. You know, that's Aunt Matilda who never got married, who saved all of her money, who owns her house, has 6 rental units. You know, Aunt Matilda, you know, who might be able to loan money to, I don't have an Aunt Matilda, but I know a lot of people do, okay? You know, might be able to loan some money or gift the money to someone. So regardless how we get there, I explain that if they can come up with $500 or $600, that there is a low-fee service in Ramsey County that can cover a lot of different services, legal needs, and that in Hennepin County there is a service that will handle family law needs, and you know that Ramsey wants $600, Hennepin wants $500. There's an administrative fee that goes with that, but that'll buy them X number of hours of attorney time at $55 an hour. So half the time we have this conversation, and I'm not exaggerating, half the time the caller says, yeah, I can put my hands on $500. And then I say, now you can move from the back of the line to the front of the line. How does that feel? And as soon as you tell somebody something like that, they're like, I didn't know that. Holy cow. You know, and then they're thankful. So then we give the referral to the Ramsey County low-fee service or to the Hennepin County family project service. You know, of course, explaining, it doesn't automatically mean you're going to get a lawyer because there have to be lawyers available to take the case. They have to have a case that's viable. You know, in the scenario I just gave, there may be some reason not to take that case on a visitation issue. And so, nonetheless, having that hard conversation I think is important. Here's what I ask 211 to do, and here's what I don't expect you to do. I ask that you plant the seed. How do you plant the seed? Did you know that if you can come up with $500 or $600, that there may be a service that can help you with reduced attorney fee rate? So that I ask you to do. I do not ask you to go all the way down there, okay? I'm not asking you, I mean, if you think it's appropriate, by all means do it. But I'm not saying you have to have that Aunt Matilda conversation with them, okay? I'm not saying you have to say, do you have an Aunt Matilda? You know, do you have a friend? Do you have a relative?
We ask that all the time.
Okay, all right.
We don't have a name for her, but.
Okay, well, and I think it's great if you do. You know, and in part, this is well within, in my view, well within providing a service. And what the service is that you're doing is you're brainstorming, and you're giving callers perspective. That, you know, much, not all of it, of course, but much of the difficulty navigating the legal system for people in legal need is that they don't have perspective. They don't know if they do not know if it is reasonable that they call and leave a message with a legal provider, you know, and say, I have a need, here's my name and here's my number. They don't have the perspective to know whether it's okay to wait 2 hours or whether it's okay to wait 2 weeks to hear back. All right? 2 hours? No, you got to wait longer than that. 2 weeks? Absolutely, way too long. You know, and that's why I say 24 hours. They don't hear back, call them again. That's what a professional does. A professional gets back to you within 24 hours. So what you do with the money conversation, planting the seed, is you give them perspective. You help establish that. Okay? So, anyone want to share about how those conversations are going? What difficulties are you encountering with those conversations? Any other tips or ideas? Kristen, what did we hear yesterday about this?
I actually have the quote.
Oh, thank you. This is why we have her.
Although I don't have the name of who said it. Lovely, really nice gal. We've seen some success here with these referrals. It's important to know how to explain it. You tell them you have to come up with the chunk of money, but the attorney bills against that chunk. And if someone's felt need is high enough, that they're going to figure out how to find that chunk of money was something an INR specialist shared.
Dan, did you get that? Okay, all right. So, a chunk of money, great phrase. Can you come up with a chunk of money? Sure. But here is why this is critical. It helps make the system more efficient. If we can get some people who don't know that they can get help for $500 or $600, if we can get them hooked with a lawyer, they're no longer floating free in the system. Obviously, their legal needs are being met. That's critical. But it's also helping the system. It's one fewer person that is trying to make their way with filing papers on their own, not knowing how to do it, not knowing where to go in the courthouse, not knowing what the system expects of them. And so their rights are being protected, and the system can then compensate and help maybe another person who is going to be worse off. So, okay, great. Very important seed to plant. And I would urge you with almost every, obviously you use your judgment, but I would urge you, with every call starting out, I want a pro bono lawyer. At least plant this seed. Okay. All right. Pardon me? Yes. Okay. So Kristen reminds me also it would be good if I looked at my notes. Reminds me that commencing January 1st, the Collaborative Community Law Initiative will be open for business. They will be in St. Paul. They don't have an address yet. They don't have a phone number yet. You will have all that information in advance. But they will be open, and they will be serving people between 200 and 325% federal poverty guidelines. Yes, Leo gives me the thumbs up. This will be a very important development, and this will be a place to send folks. They will be 501c3, and they will be young lawyers or new lawyers under the supervision of experienced lawyers, helping people in that gap, 200 to 325.
Is it totally pro bono?
No, they will be charging low fee. So this will be a low fee service. And it'll probably be somewhere in the vicinity of $65 an hour. But they will also have innovative fee devices. So they'll be doing what's called flat fee. You come in, this is all I'm going to charge you to do that. Other kinds of innovative ideas about how to get people legal services for what would be reasonable prices. So,
And do they do all types of law?
they will be doing all types of law. They will be. So,
And who all will they serve? The state or just
Well,
Metro?
I can't, that's a, back up. They will be serving St. Paul particularly, but they will be serving the Metro, and I am positive that at some point they'll be statewide. So it may only be telephone advice that they're providing statewide. So the goal, of course, is to provide, representation that is in person and effective that way. But they will begin out slowly in January, so they'll have a limited number of lawyers. But the goal is for that to expand so that eventually they have as many as 12 lawyers. So stay tuned, okay? And we'll come back and we'll make sure that you have information. I guess I may not be training before then, so it'll be information in writing. Okay, all right. Now, I want to talk about how you're making a difference. So let me check my time here. All right, we're good. So one of, I started out talking about our 3.5 years together, which just seems quite wonderful, and what we've been able to build together through our trainings and through all of our work. So we are, I think you guys and Call for Justice generally are trying to see how can we figure out what difference does it make. That's why we go back through the taxonomy and look at how the referrals have spread out. But last year with Minnesota Legal Advice Online, I think that we got an excellent opportunity to really see how this works. So to recap, Minnesota Legal Advice Online is a program, a system where low-income people, so that would be somebody at 200% federal poverty guidelines or less, so that's a single person who's earning $14,400, it's about $24,000 for a single person, and for a family of four, 200% would be, I believe, approximately $48,000, where they need to be Minnesota residents. They need to be 14 years or older. They need to have a legal matter that involves something other than criminal and bankruptcy, and where they can go online, get some screening questions, essentially what I've just gone through, and then get a prompt that says, what is your legal problem? What's the legal matter? Why are you in legal need? And they type it out. They're on that side of the portal, and once they hit send, the question goes over to the other side of the portal, to the other screen, where there's a queue. All of the questions from the question askers, the people in legal need, show up in a queue, and on this side of the screen, there are lawyers, pro bono lawyers, who are willing to answer these questions. So a lawyer can grab a question out of the queue, can type up the answer back, hit send, and the answer will go back over the portal to the person in legal need. And over here, this person now, at least in theory, has their question answered. The questions stay in the queue for 14 days. If they're not answered within 14 days, this person over here will be notified and be given some references to static legal resources, such as law help, or the court self-help centers, or the state law libraries. But over here, many of the questions are being answered by lawyers, okay? The great thing about this system, about Minnesota Legal Advice Online, is that this person over here, the person in legal need, can post the question any time of the day. The great thing over here for the lawyers who are pro bono is they can answer the question any time of the day. So as your training materials reflect, the lawyer can be answering the question at midnight in their pajamas with a glass of wine next to the computer, okay? And the great thing is, because the Twin Cities has the highest concentration of lawyers in Minnesota, this allows a lawyer in the Twin Cities to actually help somebody in Alexandria or in Fairmont, tens of or hundreds of miles away from the Twin Cities. It helps to make the system far more effective and helps to expand the ability of people in legal need to get legal advice. The other thing is that what's going from over here over to here is legal advice. It's not about how to navigate the system. It's not about how to fill a form. And remember, legal advice is the difference between only being able to say to somebody, here's where you put out the facts of the incident that you had with your ex-husband. Here's where you put those facts out. Versus, that's just helping somebody navigate the system. Versus, no, you want to stress this fact in the very first sentence of what happened. And then you want to stress this fact as the second fact. But the third thing is you don't want to talk about this, not unless you're asked. That you don't have to volunteer that third fact. So don't put that here. Don't put that in the narrative. That is legal advice. And that is critical for many people as they're going through the system. Okay, so Minnesota Legal Advice, we're all on board. We all remember how this works, right? Melissa's smiling because I know that she's referring people to it, right? And so, Minnesota MLAO launched last June. We had MLAO come and train you last May. when they were doing their soft launch. And I know that you guys started referring people to MLAO immediately after that training. This May, so a year after MLAO was up, MLAO came, had a session with stakeholders that helped get MLAO off the ground, and I should have said 211 was a stakeholder, Call for Justice was a stakeholder, many of the nonprofit legal providers and legal aid organizations were stakeholders. They were all meeting intermittently to get MLAO off the ground before May and June of last year. So May of this year, MLAO came back and they reported on the results of the first year. And their report was that for 76 counties in Minnesota, remember there are 87 in Minnesota, so for 76 counties in Minnesota, they had accumulated, I believe it was 1,100, I've got to now look at the training here, they had accumulated 1,055 questions. So over here on this side of the screen, throughout the year, 1,055 questions. And that lawyer, I don't have the stats for the number of lawyers who answered those questions, how many of those were answered. That is not what I was concerned about for this, but stay tuned. We'll be getting, we'll be dealing with that data as we go forward. Remember, it's in the first stages of this project going. But when we got that information in May, saying 76 counties, 1,055 questions, I said, okay, let's go to 211 and let's find out how many referrals 211 has made to MLAO in the first year, and what counties has 211 made those referrals from. And so we asked 211 to create those reports. They did, thank you. And as it turns out, overlapping between the two, between MLAO on this side and 211 on this side, there were 26 counties that overlapped. Okay? So what we want to do is find out how many of those referrals over here from 211 to MLAO, how many of those referrals actually matriculated. And the bad news is we can't do that because your callers are anonymous. All that you get out of them are their zip codes. All right, so we can't do cause and effect, but we can do correlations. And correlative principles are recognized statistically as being indicators, at least, of trends, of similarities, of a variety of things. And so we utilized correlative principles to analyze the data. Everybody with me so far? And I know it's in the report, but I just love saying it because I think it's so darn cool. All right, so here we go. As we dealt with the 26 counties, okay, out of those 26 counties, on this side, MLAO had 778 questions. For those 26 counties, 211 made 350 referrals. Utilizing correlative principles, with correlations being 0, meaning there's no correlation, and -1 meaning there's absolutely no correlation whatsoever. It's the opposite of a correlation. It's a dissimilarity. And +1 being a full correlation, being a lot of similarity, okay? The correlation between the referrals of the questions of 778 and 350 referrals, that correlation is +0.93. That is considered a very high correlation. So then I wanted to break it down for the 9 counties that are part of the Twin Cities metropolitan Greater Twin City primary service area. So for those 9 counties, there were 586 questions from MLAO over here. And for those 9 counties, 211 had made a total of 311 referrals. The correlative value for that from questions to referrals is +0.94. Again, very high correlation. Then we went even further because I just wanted to see what it was like with Hennepin and Ramsey, the two largest counties in Minnesota. And those numbers are even more striking. So 211 had made 245 referrals for Hennepin and Ramsey collectively. And out of that, let me back up. MLAO had a total of 316 questions. So, and 211 had made 245 referrals. So 316, 245. The correlative value of that ratio is 1.0, plus 1.0. That is a perfect correlation. So, and then the last data I'm going to give you here is that for Ramsey County alone, MLAO had 110 questions over here, and 211 had made 99 referrals. We can't do a correlation because there's not enough data points to do that. When you only have 2 points of data, you can't have enough to make a correlation. But 99 referrals, 110 questions. The other thing that is significant was that your percentages of needs reflect the same kind of percentages of Minnesota Legal Advice Online, MLAO. So 33% of your callers had family law matters that they needed help with, and 18% had landlord shelter housing matters. MLAO, 43% of their questions involve family law, and 13% of the questions involve housing. So there are a lot of similarities here. There are a lot of correlations, and I think that this is, in my view, exceptional information. I think it is very good information to indicate that a brand new project, a brand new collaboration that we'll take a little credit that Call for Justice helped facilitate, really has worked wonderfully. So we get a little credit. You guys get a whole lot of credit. And Minnesota Legal Advice Online gets a whole lot of credit. And it is a win-win, I think, for everyone. Questions? Observations?
What would they have done if they didn't get them from 211? If like Ramsey County, there were 11 that they got that might not have been from us, in that.
Well, we don't know if we don't know if every referral that 211 made in Ramsey County actually matriculated into
True.
MLAO.
Them actually going out there, yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. And MLAO and Legal Aid, which oversees MLAO, and state support, report that they have a high number of people that come through Google Analytics, that there are other programs that are referring, people to MLAO. On the other hand, Call for Justice is doing a lot of outreach in greater Minnesota relative to legal resources. And I will tell you, I go to Red Wing or Bemidji, and I sit in rooms with social service providers. So these are social service providers who have people with legal needs. And I ask, who in this room has ever heard of an online service where low-income people can get legal advice from lawyers? Raise your hand. And I have to tell you, no one is raising their hand. No one knows about it. So I've got to believe that the combination of 211, the training with Call for Justice, as well as the other providers, are all helping to make this funnel people to Minnesota Legal Advice Online. It's not perfect. It's advice by email. Now, some of the lawyers are giving, when the answer goes back over here, on the other side of the portal, the person in legal need sees the name of the lawyer, but they don't get any identifying information. But many of the lawyers are sending their contact information. Many of the lawyers are saying, call me. Some of the lawyers are saying, I'll take the case. Okay, so that's wonderful. That is great. Is it perfect? No, it's not. But is it better than somebody not being able to get legal advice? Okay? So, Jennifer, back to your question about the kid getting slapped on the bus. All right? That could be a referral. And it could be because what would happen is the lawyer would say, don't pursue it, Mom. You know? Or the lawyer may say, go do that mediation thing. Or the lawyer may say, contact the school district. This is a bullying issue and you need to deal. And then the school district is obligated under Minnesota law to deal with that. Okay? So I think MLAO does turn out to be a really good fallback referral for us. And I am told that within a year, MLAO will, on its intake, be asking, how did you get here? And one of those questions will be 211, okay? That'll be one of the options. You can be certain in a year from now what we will be doing at Call for Justice, okay? So I want to say two things to you about this and then I'll finish. I want to say, first of all, I want to say thank you. I want to say really, really thank you because it is phenomenal what you're doing. And the second thing I want to say is, you go, people. I want to be your cheerleader, okay? You go. You keep doing this, okay? This is a critical thing, and you're helping fulfill a very important need just by referring to MLAO, okay? Any questions or other commentary?
Is there a limit on how many times they can go back and forth asking questions with the attorney?
No, it's up, well, no. So let's say the attorney answers the question and the person in legal need says, okay, but what about this? Here's this thing I forgot to tell you about, and that question can go back to the lawyer. It's again still up to the lawyer whether they answer the question. But I've got to assume that most lawyers would say, oh, I didn't know about that. Okay, let me give you some more information, and here goes my answer back. Callers can post on MLAO to an unlimited extent. Okay, so I mean, somebody in legal need, they can keep going back. Whether lawyers will continue to answer the questions is a different thing. Okay, you know, you get your repeat customers to 211, right? Some of them, you know, are, you know, just doing it, right? Other questions?
Is it known how many questions blossomed into full representation?
Don't know, but hopefully that'll be metrics that they'll be looking to get.
Okay.
You know, it's a work in progress, and we don't know where MLAO will be in 5 years from now. It could be well expanded in a variety of ways. For example, they want to add documents. Right now, they can't do documents. Okay, so wouldn't it be great? But the lawyers, of course, can say, you know, okay, here's my contact information, send me documents. But it would be really nice that on the front end of the portal, the person in legal need says, I'm getting sued, and here's the attachment of what it is, rather than having to describe it. So again, with anything else, we're, you know, crawling before we walk and walking before we run, that type of thing. And, you know, we have to give credit to Minnesota Legal Advice Online and state support and legal aid. You know, that's through a grant from the Supreme Court. All of these things are coming together. And we represent 211 and Call for Justice. We represent just a small part of what that is. But what I am thrilled about is that small part is like, yeah, working good. Okay, all right. So I think that I am coming close to the end here of what I have to say. And yes, so that brings us to the last item, which is about Call for Justice and our legal emergency line that will commence beginning on on October 1st. This is not, so if you are home with your pajamas on, please understand, this is not a general legal advice line. This is a legal advice line where we are working in conjunction with 211. So what we want the legal emergencies that you're hearing. So these are folks who are facing hearings within 10 days. Or folks who've said, I have tried 13 different places, I can't find a lawyer, no one will talk to me, send them to us. We may not be able to do anything for them, but they'll at least be able to talk to me, a lawyer. Or once Kristen is admitted to the bar, Kristen as a lawyer, okay? We will be covering, it will be general advice. It will not be specific to any particular area. There'll be some things we won't be able to handle, but I am touched enough by callers who come to us to know that hearing something from a lawyer, even if it is, I'll have to get back to you about this because I have to research it, that is important to people who are in legal need. And in many respects, it's about respecting the person who's on the other end of the phone. And I'd like to think that we do a good job of that already, and that we will do a good job of that as lawyers. So, and that's all I'm going to say on the record relative to it, because it's really a call for justice and 211 type of arrangement. So once we go off the screen, I'll answer specific questions about it. Okay? And having said that, I just want to wrap up by saying a couple of other things. The most important of which is this: we love you guys. We really do. We believe that 211 is one of the most critical elements as it relates to helping get people started in the legal system. No, you're not providing legal advice. Thank goodness. Don't be doing that, okay? And you're not lawyers. But what you are is that you are there for people. You're there 24/7, 365. And you know what? You're not a tree, phone tree. You're not an answering machine. You're not hit a button and then get to another place. You are human. And this is so incredibly important. And this is why we love to partner with you. So I just want to say thank you for what you do. And I just want to also say I look forward to what else we're going to do as we go forward. When we come back, it'll be moving into our 4th year of doing work with you. I'm looking forward to how we can continue to collaborate in a variety of ways. I am thrilled to report that we are being looked at for replication, so I look forward to be able to say, we got another phone call from X or Y, okay? Please keep the lines of communication open with us. We love it when you email us and say, Ellie, I have this caller. I told her I'd call her back, but here's what the problem is. Where should I send them? Or I made this referral to the mediator. Do you think that was a good referral? And you'll get back from me, heck yes, in capital letters. Okay? Anyone else have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up?
We appreciate all the work that you put into these trainings.
Oh, thank you.
I think that they're extremely helpful, and everybody takes something away from them.
Thank you. Thanks, Leo.
And it's nice to be reminded. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see the universal sign for boredom the whole time I was doing this. So anyway, thank you, everyone. So for those at home in your pajamas, this concludes yet another Call for Justice training session. We hope that you like our training videos. Just for your information, the videos are being viewed by the general public across the country, and we believe across the world, at the rate of somewhere between 45 and 50,000 views a year. If you like this, please know that we are a nonprofit. We rely on donations and grants for our work. We would welcome your donations, and go to the website and you can get information about donating through Razoo or through some other means. And we do take checks. So thank you very much. We appreciate your attention. And we'll be back to you in 2016 with additional trainings with 211. Thank you.